What if I told you that you could win a game without even first playing a card? Well, it sounds unbelievable, but it is possible thanks to the Mulligan. And with such an important mechanic in the game, you should know what to do and what not to do. Well, even if it sounds simple, it is not. There are so many things you could do wrong when you mulligan, which is the reason why we take a look at the art of mulliganing in this video. The first thing to keep in mind is your role and the matchup you are playing. You have to identify if you are the more aggro part in the matchup or the more defensive part. And based on that assumption, you need to mulligan accordingly. As an example, when I play Kid, I have the option to mulligan for the Law and the Kid character. Now let's assume I'm playing a game against Red Zorro and I'm going second. Now the natural thought would be that I want to see the Kid. But realistically, I cannot out-aggro my opponent because he is still playing Red Zorro. That means I have to take a step back, and if I do that, I need to mulligan for the Law, because the Law has the opportunity to heal me one life, which will be critical. And if you do not do that and mulligan for the Kid, I promise you that one life that you won't heal will be costing you the game in the end. That's the reason why I have to identify my role in the matchup accordingly. The next thing you should ask yourself is, what cards does my opponent want to see? Let's stay with Kid. If I'm playing against a GP Luffy, I already know that he has 756 searches to find that Sanji pudding inside his deck. So what do I need to do? I need to find my event to KO that character immediately when it hits the board. That is even more important than me establishing a character, because that character Sanji pudding gives him so much value that it is worth foregoing that card minus in hand and not playing anything on the turn just to stop him gaining that insane value. So in that scenario, it is worth mulliganing your hand if you don't see anything to remove that character from the board. Last but not least, and maybe the more obvious consideration here, is going first or second, because the turn order is the most obvious reason why you would mulligan or keep a hand in the first way. Keep in mind, this is maybe the most important deciding point on whether you want to keep or mulligan a hand, but sadly often it is the only thing an average player considers. Keep in mind to consider all three of these principles if you want to win a game, and with these basics covered, let's move on to the common mistakes. As you can see in this footage, I'm starting off with a Gum Giant, a Law blocker, something for the end game with a Lin and a Zorro to ramp. The Salt is a nice addition. It has no counter, but I can play it on curve because I'm going first here. I'm deciding to mulligan this because I want to see maybe a 5 or 6 cost for the mid game, and let's see what I get there. I'm seeing a Law, a Sanji, another Law, another Sanji, and at least the Zorro to ramp up. This hand is trash, it's bricked up. I have to depend so heavily to get nice things out of my life and out of my deck that it is really nothing short of hard to win this game with this hand. Also with Robin, it is hard to find your Gum Giants because you usually don't play any searchers, and that card is really game breaking and you don't want to miss that. So what was the mistake here? The first mistake we are talking about is greed. Yes, I'm talking about one of the 7 deadly sins, greed. If you are greedy, you will be punished, not by the Pirate King or your deck or whatever, you will be punished by God. No, actually, it is a risk-reward thing. If you see this second hand I showcased you, you should absolutely mulligan. But if you saw the first hand and you are not that quite satisfied, you should always keep in mind there is a risk-reward ratio to that. You can see better stuff, but you can also see stuff that will lose you the game. What's important here is to know your own deck, because you built it. Who else should know it better? Have a bit of faith and don't be impatient. Focus on the first 3 principles we talked about, and if you can somehow provide 1 or 2 of them, you should be good. The next common mistake would be failing to recognize micro. You're probably thinking right now, what do I mean by that? And I will answer that by asking you a question. Take a look at these 2 hands. Which one would you think will be better? You can assume that we are going second for this. Well, do you have a guess? Okay, log it in, and the answer is neither. Because to answer which hand is better, I would need to ask you which matchup you are playing. The Hawkins maybe is good for your own game plan, but if you want a 4-drop which is better for you, you could play the Kikunojo. The Kikunojo is perfect into stuff that has 6k as base stat line for their leaders. Shirohoshi is something that is way better into black matchups than Beji, at least early on in the game, because it can protect itself. But Beji into Basil Hawkins into a Law maybe works better together. I know that this is all pretty obvious, but you need to keep in mind, in a game where RNG is the deciding factor on if you lose or win, these micro decisions are the only thing you are having an influence on in the game. So that means you need to do these accordingly. And that leads us to the last point: you need to know your own deck. Stupid, you built it. You need to know what your win conditions are, what makes you strong in certain matchups. You need to know the meta, you need to know what to mulligan for, and you need to know if it is better to now focus on your own deck strategy or if it is more important to disrupt the opponent's strategy.